Good morning, it's Kale Casey here on September 22nd with Deputy Incident Commander Tom Kurth from the Alaska team. Real quick before we dive into how this fire is being fought, we want to remind you, community meeting tonight is virtual on Facebook right here at 7:30 p.m. So again, community meeting tonight at 7:30 p.m. We also want to thank everybody who's been posting questions and sharing this with people in your communities or people who are evacuated who might not have internet. So again, neighbors helping neighbors, we really appreciate it. We have a special guest today for our fourth day of Break It Down. Tom Kurth is the retired Fire and Aviation Director for the state of Alaska. He's got a 45-plus year career in fire. He's our Deputy Incident Commander, and he's going to help us understand how, with very limited resources, we're protecting the houses in Ruth area, in Forest Glen, Mad River, Post Mountain, Wildwood, Hayfork, and all the way around the fire. Tom Kurth.
Okay, thank you, Kale. All right, we're going to put a little context in this to get started. And to do that, you have to know like the massive fire problem that we have all across the western U.S., and that includes 45 teams out right now, which are all managing complex fires, and over 30,000 firefighters. So how we get our little piece of the pie and what we do with it is what we want to focus a little bit. Let's go back just a little bit here and talk context regarding this fire, which started, we believe, about August 17th with a lightning siege of some sort. So there is some good news here. And again, we're fighting fire on the map here, and that's very deceiving. Everything flat here, everything small and compressed. And when you're looking at miles and miles here, 1 mile on the map is liable to be more like 3 miles on the ground when you're going up and down. And so that's very arduous work for any firefighters that are out there. Now, what we don't depict here is the south zone here. This fire has 3 different forests, numerous counties, numerous oversights, and 3 different teams, one on the south zone, of course, one on the west zone, one on the north zone. We're on the north zone, but down here in the south zone, which reaches way down here, we do have some victories down here, as we do on the west zone, and certainly on the north zone here. That is, you know, you can see some big movement that occurs when you get these wind events, and that is north and south in one case, east and west here. And we do have containment line around these various extensions that we get when we've had these big wind events. Same thing goes in the south zone down here, way down there. So one team here, CAL FIRE here, we're over here, and then that leaves us focused on this area right now with our limited resources that we've mentioned here. So how do you capitalize on limited resources and make the most of it? Well, it's these little victories, but you have to pay attention to firefighting fundamentals. That's generally anchor, flank, and pinch. And so picking these little areas that you do that in is what we're up to right now and trying to get these little victories here. So that's occurred down in this area here, here. We've got lots of line up in here, over here, and that's to protect all these communities that Kale was mentioning here and where our values at risk are. So we have to prioritize where our resources go in and what they're going to do and how much they can accomplish. And that's, again, on a limited basis. You know, when you got all these fires asking for resources, that's a national prioritization that takes place, and then we get our little piece of the pie, which tends to be, at this point, late in the season like this, a very small piece. And so maximizing our utility out of those crews is critical what we're doing in these areas here.
And let's break that down, Tom, for the locals, because we know we've had a lot of great questions about Ruth. So we put one of our elite 20-person crews working with the heavy equipment above Ruth, where that fire's been backing down to our containment lines. That we only had 4 additional surge crews, right? So the operations chiefs coordinated to put 1 at that highest priority, and then they put 2 across the front of the fire to try to tie all these bulldozer lines below the road,
right?
Which normally we'd have 10 or so crews all the way across this, right? We'd have hundreds of firefighters working all in coordination on a normal year where we had more resources. This would be crews up and down, but because Post Mountain, Forest Glen cabins, Wildwood, Hayfork, we know how concerned you are. We live in fire-impacted areas. Tom's from Fairbanks, where you have fires in your neighborhood. You were on level. It's not that it's funny at all.
No.
But it's ironic that Tom was under level evacuation last summer during our 5 million acre season. So we relate to this kind of thing, and that's where. How does that work? Do you call the operations chief and say, hey, let's move the crews around? Or how does that conversation happen with the forest and the other teams to prioritize stopping it going into Post Mountain or stopping it going into Ruth versus maybe this way?
Okay, so, I mean, typically on a fire with this amount of line in it, let's say we had our capability to get all we wanted, that might be 40 crews, that might be 60 crews, something to that effect. What we have is 4 crews on a limited time frame. So we have to go in here and pick and choose our battles very carefully. One of those places is up here where 36 is, and these communities such as Post Mountain, Mad River, Forest Glen, Upper Mad River, and so on and so forth. We do not want this fire advancing this far across this road. So doing a little check work in here. This is done by aircraft, same thing down here. So we slow the fire down. We temper the fire behavior to the best of our ability, and that allows these crews to get up on the fire's edge, to either go direct on it, which again is right on that edge, and keep 1 foot in the black and then put that fire out, or perhaps in certain cases, if they see an opportunity or conditions warrant, they're off the edge of the line on an indirect approach where they actually burn out the fuels between where we can get access to and the fire's edge. So that might be, 100 yards worth, or it might be, a mile's worth, or also the other things that we do around here, you're going all across here. So these crews have to make the most work of what they're given and the opportunities that we have, and then each day we'll go in and prioritize. Maybe we've been down in here, over in here, and move those crews. So it's mobile firefighting to the best efficiency that we can point out as to what our objectives for that very moment are.
And we call that, there's a slang for it called whack-a-mole. When you don't have as many fire crews as you'd like to, you can't do the traditional spread out and everybody kick butt.
Yeah.
So you have to whack-a-mole. You have to find out where the heat is. So we use our fire behavior analyst, Chris Moore.
Right.
We use infrared cameras from the helicopters when they are able to fly. And then all that information gets fed through the command team, which Tom leads with Norm. And everybody underneath that creates that prioritization of, okay, if we're going to have heat in here today, we need a flank. How do we get that today? We're going to use helicopters like they did yesterday. So they did get those helicopters out flying in Ruth yesterday. We were really trying to get good footage of it. Our firefighters and information officers were in the trees with the firefighters, so it was hard to see them dropping. But those of you who are in the area and heard the aviation yesterday, that was a big win to get those helicopters up and cooling off that edge to create that flank. So then we can start pinching, right?
Right. Now, there's an inherent risk factor that's involved here when you're picking and choosing, because typically we're anchoring, we're flanking, and we're progressing. And if you look here, this is just a section of line right in the middle of 2 hot spots of line on either side. So you have to find the safest place to start your line in, and then build from that. And that might depend on fire behavior. It certainly depends on weather. It certainly depends on whether we have road access. It certainly how is our lookouts, communications, escape routes, those things established so that we can safely go in and pick out a piece of line and grab it, and then eventually we'll stitch all this together into a containment figure there. But as we begin here, it's a little bit like what we're putting a quilt together of some sort, piece by piece, until we get the whole quilt done in one form or fashion here.
And the other option to break this down is to just say, we'll hold it at the 36. But we're not, our operations chiefs decided, let's give every single effort we can to come in below the 36, get those dozers working, get those crews working. There has been a whack-a-mole problem on this hotspot right here. This is an area that we've heard operations say, okay, at nighttime we've been bringing in resources, or during the day we'll move a crew to make sure this doesn't get ahead of the rest of the fire edge, because if it's going to go, we want it to go together to a containment line. It looks like Eric and Aubrey have a question from the audience.
Lou Pinto wants to know, do you think the anticipated rain in the forecast will get this fire under better control, and likelihood that it will flare up with increasing temperatures next week?
So that's a good question. We had Brooke Tabor on yesterday.
Sure.
We have a tiny 0.05 100ths of an inch of possible moisture coming in. And then this weekend in Reading is supposed to be back to 100 degrees. So the predicted temperatures for this weekend in Reading and across the fire area are going to go right back up. So Tom is 0.05 inch and up. It helps, I'm sure.
Of course it helps, but this fire, this far along in the season has had all summer to dry out, right? So all these fuels have dried, and they keep talking about what we refer to 1,000-hour fuels, but those are just big, heavy
thick trees.
stump, and they just hold fire until the next opportunity. That might be hot and dry, that might be windy, but if we just get hot and dry weather, then it's this somewhat steady progression. If it's accompanied by wind, then we get these longer runs out of it here. But by no means is this fire out, and it's going to take a series of rain events that may not occur until well into the season, such as, I've even heard November.
November and even December. They mentioned in the analysis of the seasons around here, and we know it's 2020, record hot summer, more days over 110 degrees than ever before. Eric, another question from the audience?
Actually, I was just about to ask it, but the forest answered it. It was about, we have held the fire south of 36.
Right, so 36 hasn't been closed yet, but what I would like to advise folks are two things. One, at some point, we're going to be working off the 36 road at a mile marker that we'll announce at some point when operations figures it out to do some holding of this fire as it moves towards the containment lines. That's, whether it's actually gone to the road or not is not what I'm talking about. At some point, we're going to have to work off that road to support that mission that we're trying to keep off the road itself. So the main priority for the Post Mountain, the Forest Glen, Wildwood, and Hayfork residents to know is they're doing everything they can to try to check this and pinch it before it gets to 36, but that still might involve closing 36 to be safe in our operations, to have water tenders in place, to have a base of operations up there. That they're trying to pull off a miracle with very few resources, and they're giving it a good go. Now, does that mean we're going to pull it off?
The 36 road is a good illustration of how to prioritize, because earlier, this section of line, which has a lot of values at risk through this valley here and all down this area here, right? Because
that's that Ruth corridor with the Eel River and the store and Hettinshaw and all those
off
cabins.
comes the smoke, out comes the sun, in comes the wind, and puts a lot of, excites this edge of the fire here. So instead of focusing here, we had to come down here with our limited amount of crews, focus on getting this containment here, and then in the meantime, we lost our focus over here, simply the fact that this is where we had to prioritize everything, and then it's coming back to here. We'd prefer to stay off the 36 road and choose some area through here as a better option here. So that if we get fire behavior or fire conditions that are conducive to that, you'll see this start to stitch together here. 36, though, is another alternative here, and as Cale lined out, that's going to take some other coordination, certainly with the public and the community members out there.
So the evacuation orders will stay in place. There's still folks asking about whether they can go back to Ruth. The answer is no. There's active firefighting, helicopter operations, engines. There's folks who are evacuated from Post Mountain who are wondering how's it going. We've already addressed that. We'll address it more tonight. Wildwood, we know there's only a few folks out there, but they do have a big bulldozer line that they've been hardening and working so that if we need to, we can burn back to the main fire and hold it here. Wildwood's up here. Hayfork residents, we know you're getting big smoke drift. We promised you yesterday, and we'll stay committed. We've been speaking with your chief daily. If we have an event that moves the fire rapidly towards the 36, we'll break in and we'll go live. And for now, I need to get Tom back to all of his meetings and duties. Thank you for your time. It's always nice to have incident commanders available for the public. Thank you for helping each other out. You're part of the Green Pants Nation. Neighbors helping neighbors. Share the feed. We'll see you tonight. And remember, hunters and firefighters don't mix. Please stay away from our firefighting personnel. They're very focused and they're very engaged. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Cale.